Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really cool story about how a simple, locally built app broke through a wall of bureaucracy to get vital aid to fishermen in rural Indonesia. It's a fantastic example of a small tech solution that had a massive impact.
Okay, let's start with a problem I think we can all relate to, right? Bureaucracy. And this quote, wow, it just says it all. A stack of paper decided your fate. I mean, just think about that. Your chance at getting critical government aid didn't come down to your need. It came down to your ability to fight through a confusing, frustrating, and often totally unfair paper-based system. So let's zoom in on a place called Bulukumba, Indonesia. The fishermen there were up against a system that was, slow, you couldn't see how it worked, and it just felt deeply unfair. Getting help really depended on three things: where you lived, who you knew, and whether you could actually afford to stop working just to deal with all the paperwork.
And yeah, this really breaks it down. We're not talking about small hassles here. These were massive roadblocks. Just imagine, you're a fisherman on some remote island. A trip to the main office isn't just a short drive, it's a whole day's journey, which means a whole day of lost income. The crazy part is, the system was basically shutting out the very people it was created to help. And you know what? It was a nightmare for everyone involved. On one side, you had the fishermen feeling totally cut off, like they had no power. And on the other, the poor folks at the Fisheries Department were, and I mean this literally, drowning in stacks of paper. It was impossible to keep track of anything, let alone evaluate proposals fairly. The whole process was just completely broken, from top to bottom. So what happened? Well, instead of just waiting around for some big, expensive, top-down fix, the team at the Bulukumba Fisheries Department did something awesome. They decided to build the solution themselves. This wasn't about bringing in fancy consultants or getting a massive budget. Nope, this was a local team looking at a local problem and figuring out how to solve it with what they already had.
And they called it Promina. It's basically a simple web app, but its mission is huge. It's all about connecting fishermen directly with the help they need. The goal was to totally level the playing field, so it didn't matter where you lived or who you knew, everyone gets a fair shot.
And this is the absolute core of the whole thing. Promina brought in a brand new, kind of radical idea. First come, first served. That's it. It completely removed the who you know factor. The app just logs every proposal as it comes in and puts it in a queue. Simple, automated, and totally fair. All right, so how does it actually work? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this simple app totally changed the game. The whole thing is designed to be super clear, super transparent, and really to put the power back in the hands of the fishermen.
Okay, so the process is really straightforward. A group gets together, they submit the request online, and boom, it's in the queue. But check this out. Step 4 is what I think is absolutely brilliant: the interactive review. If you make a mistake on your form, they don't just throw it out. Nope. An admin actually calls you up to help you fix it, so you don't lose your spot in line. How amazing is that? Okay, but what about the obvious question, right? What about older folks who aren't tech savvy? Or what if the internet connection is terrible? This is always the big challenge, especially in rural areas. And the team behind Promina knew this. They knew that just building the app wasn't going to cut it. They had to make sure everyone could use it.
And their solution was so smart. They didn't just throw tech at the problem, they built a human support system around the tech. They trained local government officers to be on-the-ground helpers for anyone who struggled. And they tapped into the community itself, kids helping their parents, neighbors helping neighbors. It was a brilliant way to make sure the digital divide didn't turn into an access divide.
So, the big question is, did it work? Well, the numbers speak for themselves. And it's not just a story about being more efficient, it's a story about building trust and bringing more people into the system.
First off, just look at these numbers. The number of registered groups almost doubled. That's insane. Why? It's simple, really. For the first time, fishermen actually believed the system was fair. They felt like if they put in a request, it would actually be seen and treated seriously.
And remember how we talked about remote communities being left out? Well, the app fixed that too. Before, requests only came from 7 sub-districts. After Promina, all 10 were participating. That means those faraway communities were finally getting a voice. And get this for efficiency. What used to take weeks, sometimes even a month, just to get an initial look, now takes just 2 days. 2 days! When your entire livelihood depends on getting that new engine or fixing your boat, that's not just faster, it's life-changing.
But here's a really cool side effect they probably didn't see coming. The app basically became a dictionary of needs. Because all the data was digital, for the first time, the government could see exactly what fishermen needed in real time. It wasn't just guesses anymore. They had hard data,
which meant they could plan and budget way more effectively for what people actually needed, not just the standard stuff. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit, because this is about more than just one app and one department. This is really about creating a blueprint for something bigger, a sustainable model for how government can work better for people.
And you have to understand, this was never meant to be a short-term fix. It was designed from day one to be a permanent part of how they do things. It's got official regulations backing it up. And because they built it themselves, no expensive contractors, it's super cheap to keep running. Plus, they're always checking in on it and making it better.
And the success is contagious. Promina has become a model that other government agencies are looking at. The Departments of Agriculture and Trade are already saying, hey, we want to do that too. It just goes to show you, when you create a system that's simple and fair, you don't just solve a problem, you build trust. And that trust is the foundation for bigger things, like real economic growth.
So it kind of leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? What if the biggest thing holding us back from a fairer system isn't a lack of money, but just a lack of imagination? The story of Promina is amazing because it shows that sometimes the most powerful changes don't come from a huge budget or some super complex tech. They come from a dedicated team on the ground, looking at a very human problem and solving it with the tools they have, and a whole lot of commitment to just being fair.